Well, I don't know about you, but I spent this last week watching the disintegration of the American political system. On the one hand, you have the abominable snake oil salesman, and on the other hand, you have the Democratic Party, which is doing a pretty fierce imitation of self-immolation. And you know what? I can't stand it anymore. It's like the fall of the Roman Empire. I don't even want to think about it, let alone watch it. So I'm going to use this commentary as an antidote. Something entirely different, which is much more germane to the life of AIDS-free world, because you may have noticed in the middle of last week, there was an announcement that the most recent international trial for a vaccine to prevent HIV failed. Now, the virus is extremely Machiavellian and has managed to outsmart all of the vaccine attempts in the past. But let me give you some fascinating little note of history. Back in 2003, in Thailand, there was a vaccine trial to prevent HIV under the aegis of the American Army, of all things. And it was a randomized trial. They gathered together 16,000 people, all of them HIV negative, all of them sexually active. They divided them in half. 8,000 received the new vaccine and 8,000 received the placebo. The vaccine was interesting because it was a combination of two failed vaccines combined in a new vaccine. And when the trial was over and they had tested people, in 2009 they announced the results. So the results were a 31% protective factor for the acquisition of HIV. So even though it wasn't something that you would want to universalize because it wasn't high enough a protection, it was still a modest protection, the first time ever there had been any decent result from a vaccine trial. And they thought they could build on it. So fast forward to 2016 and South Africa, and this latest trial, where they did add ingredients to the vaccine from Thailand and applied it this time to 5,000 or 6,000 people on a randomized basis, people who were sexually active between the ages of 18 and 35, all of them HIV negative. Half of them were given the new vaccine, half of them were given the placebo. It extended over 18 months. They had 6 injections of the vaccine. And then last week, when they looked at the results, they found that there were almost exactly the same numbers of people who had become HIV positive during the course of the trial, whether they were on the placebo or receiving the vaccine, so they gave up the trial. They were right to do so. But like all science, they aren't deterred. There are still many trials in the pipeline. They're excited about getting to a vaccine however many years it takes. I think they will. And after all, it's desperately needed. We can keep people alive on antiretroviral drugs. Last year there were, I would think, around 1.5 million new infections. But just imagine if we had a vaccine. It would make all the difference in the world. That was last week. I'm Stephen Lewis.